You're listening to the Spark Your Light podcast, where my mission is to help you create a life that sparks the light inside of you. And this is episode 298, The Audacity to Be Resilient with Erika Rothenberger. Today's guest, Erika, wears many hats. She is a speaker and author. She works in the construction industry, and she's also a mom of two. And she has wonderful energy and amazing things to share with you. So it's going to be a really good episode. Erika, thanks so much for joining me.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited to be here today. There's going to be so much energy popping out of here.
I love it. I love it. So let's get right into it.
Yes.
I want to talk about resilience because it is essential in all things. And it's a huge part of your life, your personal experiences. I actually want to go back. So Erika had a really powerful, life-changing, traumatic experience. I want to go back before that. So we're going to get there, and I'm just giving the audience some context. I want to go back to childhood. Do you feel like you were resilient?
Such a good question. I never would have said yes until the incident that we'll talk about later happened. And then I actually peeled back the onion through a lot of therapy, through a lot of self-searching, through a lot of just digging into myself and looking back and being like, wow, I actually was so resilient through so many capacities of my life. And I'll give you a few examples. Yeah. One, I remember being in first grade, and my mom was a teacher. She had her master's plus 60. She was a ferocious reader. And in first grade, I couldn't read. And I remember having to go to the reading specialist and finding out that I had to get into a special reading program, and for the next 5 years had to go and work with a reading specialist. And I look back at that time and that's a hard time to be the kid that's drawn out of school and has to go and get special help. Yeah. And yet your mom's supposed to be the one that is teaching you all of these things. And yet at the same time, I look back and at a very young age, from age 7, I learned that, hey, listen, if I wanted to be able to get ahead, I had to work a little bit harder than maybe the person to the right or the left of me, right? Ended up becoming an engineer and, going and, doing very well in school. But I think we realized that some of those setbacks, even at an early age, start to happen. Or maybe it was the date I didn't have to the prom, right? And I remember realizing, oh my goodness, I'm going to go by myself, or I'm not going to go. And recognizing the resilience to be no, I'm actually going to ask someone to go, right? Stop waiting around for something to happen. And so what I realized is I was building this muscle all along. And then my parents went through an extremely bitter divorce. Both of them were alcoholics. Both of them had tried to commit suicide. Just a lot of childhood, layers of different trauma. And I know many of your guests that are listening have dealt with that too. But what we recognize is when we're in it, sometimes we don't see it as, hey, we're resilient, because it feels so heavy. And then you actually take a step outside of it and you realize, wow, I have been working on this muscle for so long in my life.
Wow. And just to say that you went from not being able to read in first grade to being an author, I mean, that could literally move me to tears alone. It's no impediment needs to hold us back. And if we allow labels or past experiences to determine what our goals are, then we will never reach our full potential. So I love that. And I think it's really interesting that your examples were all related to challenges you faced in your life. Because I think a lot in the self-help world, there's so much around building resilience that it's artificial. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I just think it is. I'm curious your thoughts on that. Did you do any artificial resilience building before or after the traumatic experience, which we'll talk about? And how does that relate to the more lived resilience building?
Right. And, I always say, is it the chicken or the egg, right? Which way do we look at it? And resilience, in my opinion, is not something we can order on 2-day Prime. It's not something we can pick up off the shelves at Walmart. It really is, in my opinion, something that absolutely needs to be built. Is it something you can work on and something that you can artificially try to extract? Yes. But I feel it's much harder to do so, right? It's through the lived experience and recognizing those lived experiences that then make that muscle stronger, right? You don't just show up at the gym one day and get a 6-pack, right? It's all of the times that, you're going there and continuing to flex the muscle, work on the muscle, define the muscle. And, sometimes it's actually in the times that we have to take a break, right? Like taking a break, even like from the gym, right? Taking a rest day to then be able to work to make that muscle even stronger. So sometimes for me, it was the times in between, those times of feeling like I needed to be resilient, which is really where the growth ended up happening, going back and being able to do the true reflection and sitting on those moments and looking back at them. I remember, going back to the reading situation in 5th grade, I remember all these, these students were going on the gifted and talented program, and they got to leave in 5th grade and go to the middle school. And I remember yearning to want to be there, right? To be like, why am I not being selected? I could have used that to hold me back, but if anything, it just made me push harder.
Yeah.
And I'm not always saying pushing hard is the answer, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's like actually working through the soreness, working through the pain, working through those setbacks that actually set us up to make us even stronger when the obstacles come out, to make that outcome just so much more rewarding too.
Yeah, I love it. I was just talking to my friend, and I was telling her about how I feel like I'm in a time where I just need to push through. And I feel like in our culture, we're so cognizant of self-care and don't burn out, which I think is extremely important. But I think that we've come to a line where pushing through is considered bad, or even like the fact that you had to say, like, I'm not always saying that it's the answer. Like,
right.
It's like the natural preface of that. Like, I don't know, like, but it is a lot of the time. And I think that it's easy just with the messaging in today's world to be afraid of pushing through.
Yes,
soreness.
I do too. And I think right now, like we've almost like softened it. Like,
Yes.
ooh, it's like, ooh, don't work so hard. Ooh, don't push so hard. Ooh, you're going to like burn yourself out in this. And yes, we have to always watch that balance. And I always believe there's a time to pause, to reflect, to have, the power of the pause. But I do believe that a body in motion stays in motion, and the consistent actions are what's going to bring you towards that goal. It's one of the reasons my podcast, Grit, Grace, and Glitz, starting with grit, right? You have to have that grit every day. Yes, you have to give your pockets of grace. And the reason the grace is in the middle is that on the other side, we have to be celebrating the glitz, the things that we're doing each and every day to push ourselves further towards that goal. And some day at times that may seem like a huge epic push on a Tuesday and less of a push on a Wednesday. And to me, you really have to find that balance, but to stay in that motion, to keep moving forward. And anyone that you would talk to that's successful, it's the consistency. It's saying, hey, listen, I stayed in the game when I could have thrown myself out. And back in 1st grade, I could have just made the story up in my head that, well, I just am not meant to be a gifted and talented student. And I am damn gifted and talented in my own ways, right? Yes. And I didn't let those things hold me back or give me a badge that said, you're labeled as this, saying, listen, how am I going to use this to my advantage? If anything, it's because I had to work harder that I think it's actually propelled me further.
I love it. I feel that in all of those situations, you could use it as an excuse to just, you know what? This is just how I am. I'm not smart enough. Or, I'm in this situation where it's really hard and I don't want to burn out. So I'm going to press the brakes. Or you could use it as motivation.
Right. And I always say, listen, anytime I talk to a client, anytime I'm working with someone I'm coaching, when they say I feel stuck, I say, let's look at your action over the last week. And many, many times there was very little action taken. Sometimes all it is that one extra phone call, writing that one more page, going to that gym 10 more minutes a day, whatever it is that the goal that you're working on, the action is always usually the hardest place to start. And I heard someone say the other day, and I absolutely love it, and I don't even know who to like coin this to, but they said the hardest muscle at the gym that you have to work on is the actual pushing of the front door. Right? Like the heaviest, not the hardest, the heaviest one, because it's saying, hey, listen, I'm stepping into it. And think about that in any aspect of your life, right? It's picking up the pen, deciding to put the microphone in front of you to record the podcast, deciding to step on that first stage, whatever it may be that you're working towards, it's starting to take that action. And then once you do, you're like, oh my goodness, most of it was just up in here in my head. And I was so worried about it for so long. Instead of just doing the bold action, even if it's the wrong action, it feels way better than doing nothing at all.
100%. I love it. I'm totally with you. I am a massive action type of gal. It makes me feel so good. I love it. So fast forwarding, you had a life of resilience. You maybe didn't recognize it. And then you had a traumatic experience that required immense amounts of resilience. Do you want to share about that with our listeners? Because they're probably wondering.
Yes. And absolutely, I'm more than happy to share. And I truly believe that all of the trials and tribulations that happen to us, when you're willing to share it, to me, it's been a huge part of my healing process. And so I appreciate you just giving me the space to share it with your listeners. And what I want to remind you is that before I share this, we all have punches. We all have things that have happened to us. We all have setbacks. And if you're listening to this today, I know you have a story too. I know every single person listening to this has some story that feels like, it's thrown them to the ground, that it's taken them, that it's derailed them, that it's not made them probably operate in the capacity that they've wanted to. And so I want to just honor that. And my setback is no worse or better than anyone's. It just is part of my story and part of my tapestry, just like every other listener has on here. And this one may seem more dramatic. So I just want to warn anyone listening to this that, sometimes when I tell it, because I've told it so many times, it can seem a little bit less dramatic to me than it really is to someone listening to it. So I just ask any of the listeners to just understand that this has been a process that I've worked through for the last 2.5 years. And it was back on June 16th of 2022. A day like any other, a day where I said, it would never happen to me looking back. My husband was in Kansas City. My 2 kids were with the sitter. It was a summer day and I had a networking meeting at approximately 9:00 that morning. And as I left that networking meeting, I pushed off my 10:00 to 10:15 because I was running late. The networking meeting was phenomenal. And I remember at approximately 10:03, I was sitting at a red light and I left a video note for my kids telling them to have a beautiful day and, just have fun with the sitters. And as I pulled into my parking spot where I had worked for the last 10 years, pulled in the exact same parking spot, took that last sip of lemon water with the Himalayan sea salt. And I know some of you are probably going, ew, but it's one of my favorites in the morning. And I went to go gather my belongings that were in the front seat. And I ajarred my door. And as I went to turn back to grab my purse and turn back one more time, there he was. It was a man I had never seen before, someone who I didn't know. And the words that muttered out of my mouth were, "Sir, can I help you?" And before those words the last word even left my tongue, he punched me straight in the face. He grabbed me by the hair. He threw me to the concrete pavement. And he continued to beat on me. 5, 6, 7 times. And I tried to pull away. I tried to punch. I tried to bite. I tried to scream. No one was in the parking lot. There were no cameras on the building. No one witnessed what had happened. And he clearly didn't like what was going on and decided to take his elbow and put it under my throat. And I knew in that last moment, in those milliseconds, which felt like minutes to me, that could be my last breath there. That could be my last moment to be the mom to Drew and Adeline, the last time that I was going to talk to my husband. And that was where my life was going to end that day. And he squeezed so tight that I ended up passing out completely. And luckily, by the act of someone way higher than me, I was able to get to my feet and was able to actually adrenaline. I don't even know what came over me, but I was able to get to my feet and start running. And I ran towards my office building in what always seemed so close, seemed like a marathon that day, not knowing if he would chase me with a gun or if he had a knife, if he was going to attack me again, and screamed, for help. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that he had actually been in prison for 12 years. He had drug possession for years and I actually had assaulted 5 prison guards in jail in New York. They let him out prematurely. On June 15th, the night before my attack, he actually assaulted 4 women in Philadelphia and then proceeded to rape a woman right before my attack. He was an ex-boxer. And after I ran for help, I quickly was the paramedics, the detectives, the police officers. I mean, it was just a see, but getting me safety and getting me to a trauma center was most important. Unbeknownst to me, he escaped by foot. They think that he was trying to take my car and started burying himself in the marshes and the grass. They sent the dogs and the drones in. And because of that, because of the attack with me, fortunately, he was caught after, the 5 women prior to me, and was taken into custody. I was taken to the hospital. And the next 48 to 72 hours were an utter blur, just reports and hospital visits and just trying to decide how I was actually going to move on from this event. And I look back, and as I say this story out loud, no matter how many times I've said it or shared it, it really makes me reflect and say, wow, and I want anyone that's listening to this to think of their own story, whether it's, a child that you're dealing with a learning disability, whether it's a bitter divorce, whether it's the loss of a job or loss of a parent, we've all had those. And I want you to realize how far you've come. And although I'm still working through therapy, I'm still actually have a court date actually on Wednesday again. And dealing through the repercussions of this, I've realized there's been so much good that's come out of it, so much healing, so much processing, so many people that I know I've impacted for the positive because I've been willing to share my story, didn't stay quiet. And pretty quickly I made that decision. And I remember about 48 hours after the event, hearing the giggles of my kids and knowing I needed to be the strongest mom that I could for them. And being the woman that I was, although feeling so broken and so crumbled and wanting to be that victim, I decided I wasn't going to stay there. And I wasn't going to just be a mere survivor. I was going to be a thriver, and I was going to figure out, because everything is figure outable. I love that word. I say it to my kids all the time, and saying, I'm going to figure out how to get through this and then use my voice to change the lives of others.
I am speechless. It's such a traumatic experience that you turned into something positive. And there are few people in the world who can do that. And it's so beautiful to see the impact that you were having on so many people's lives and your own healing process. I mean, thank you so much for sharing with us. First of all, I can imagine, despite all the healing, that it's hard to tell.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's hard. I can't even imagine what you go through with court dates and having to tell it over and over again and relive in so many ways.
Right. And I always say, listen, we have to think about all the positive that comes out of it. And I'm not trying to just make this the cup's half full and glassy and this, that. Yes, it sucks. And there's days where it sucks more than others, right? Yeah. And I'm just going to be 100% honest, because that's exactly what your podcast is about, just being, bold and brave and fearless and sharing that. But I will tell you, when you start to see the difference that your story can make and the impact that it can make, so much good can come out of it. And to me, biggest part of my healing process has been actually sharing it, saying it out loud, and knowing that I wasn't going to live in fear. I wasn't going to let this one incident impact the rest of my life, to live in a cocoon. And I am not telling everyone that's listening to this, hey, dust off, get up, go back and do everything. I recognize this is a process. It's a journey. Yeah. It's a journey I will work through from now until probably the day I die, right? Yeah. Then there's certain things that will strike me and certain things that will set me back. But all in all, we're all going to have some sort of punch in our life. And if you haven't had it yet, it's going to come at some point. Yeah. And to me, it's exactly where we started this podcast is, what are you doing right now to work on that resilience muscle? Yeah. What are you doing directly, artificially, indirectly, to make sure that when something does happen, you're better able to handle it? And again, it doesn't mean dust off and just move on. It means, hey, how can I take this trial and turn it into something that really can be an impact on other people's lives?
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to start at the resilience, because I was curious how you think you were prepared to have that massive amount of resilience that so many people just wouldn't have.
Right. And I love that you asked that. So yes, there was all those things through my life, and I could go on and different things and different setbacks that were there. But I truly do believe that there's also a part of it that just adding to it. And it was the mindset work that I was doing every day. It's working out every day. It was working on my mental acuity. It was working on my physical strength. It was working on my mindset. It was trying to show up in all capacities of my life. Like for me, you know, I'm really, really defensive of my time in the morning, right? Journaling, making sure I'm doing my meditation, making sure I have 4 books that every morning I read. And when I say that, I don't really mean 4 chapter books. I mean, literally they're a page, you know, a quote or a scripture or, you know, something spiritual that I read every single morning. And just really, I believe that's the foundation of your day, finding and defending that quiet time. Some of us that may be 5 minutes, some of us that may be 50 minutes, whatever time that is, just defending it and making it non-negotiable to starting your day.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So not just all of the past experiences, but the current routines and habits that you had to really like protect your mind.
Yes.
And your energy. And that gives you the willingness. I mean this as a metaphor, but in this sense, it's not a metaphor, to fight back.
Yes. 100%. 100%. And I truly believe it's the days that are easy that you have to make sure you're doing it, because it's easy to want to lean back and do all of that when it gets hard. But it's just like any relationship we build. You need to build it when times are good. So when times are bad, you already have built that foundation. And I think so often we wait. Oh, well, I don't need to go to therapy until this. I don't need a journal because life is so good right now.
Yeah.
And be grateful for everything that you have. So when something does happen, you've already been working on that. You already have built that habit.
Yeah.
And then it almost feels non-negotiable in your day.
Yeah. I love that. Something I want to go back to that you mentioned earlier that I think applies here too. You talked about how, you know, the lived experiences of resilience were really powerful. But then you mentioned like the artificial ones are great too. What do you think about creating artificial lived experiences? Meaning like, not just like, I'm going to do the cold plunge. I don't think there's anything wrong with cold plunge. And I actually have a lot of thoughts on the cold showers, which I may record a podcast on in the future, but something more like, I'm going to challenge myself in this activity. Like maybe you are a terrible swimmer and you're like, you know what, I'm going to take a swimming class. Like I'm going to do like a real lived experience. I'm going to set a goal that is intentionally just a little bit out of reach. What do you think about that?
I think it's a brilliant idea. I think, you know, if we're not challenging ourselves, we're not growing, we're not changing, we're becoming stagnant. We're really dying, right? I mean, I think about any large companies, right? Like think about Blockbuster. Right? I know some of your listeners that are like, wait, what is Blockbuster? Well, we used to actually go to a store and get our movies on Friday night to watch them. But they're out of business now because they didn't evolve and change, right? Or Radio Shack or just, just other things like that. And if you bring it back to business and you think about it, like if we're not constantly sharpening our pencil and we're letting it get dull, it will still write. But how well will it write? So are you willing to sharpen your saw or sharpen your pencil to get to that next level? And I want to challenge everyone listening to this. It doesn't have to be a massive thing. Like to your point, like it could just be like, hey, listen, I'm going to start to go to the Y once a week and swim because I'm not comfortable with it, right? And I have, you know what I mean? I want to be more comfortable when I'm at my friend's pool or with my children or whatever it may be. I truly believe that we all need a goal that gives us that challenge factor. It gives us that grittiness, that it feels uncomfortable, because when it feels uncomfortable, it means we're growing.
Yeah. And when you can learn to thrive in discomfort, that carries over to situations that you didn't plan, that you have absolutely no control over.
Yes. And I truly believe, like, I feel like it should be a class that, like, especially our youth need to start to take, right? Like, I feel like we've gotten so sheltered in so many ways. Like, oh, I'll take care of this. I'll do this. I'll do that. Like, no, you need to grow and you need to work through it. And like, I was with someone the other day and he was telling me a story about how his son actually, he used to be in the police department and his son had gotten in some trouble and his buddy called him because he knew, well, I know him. And the dad actually said, no, let him handle it, and didn't go down to the police station and didn't take care of it. And he told this story and was like, it was one of the hardest moments of my life as a parent, but it was one of the best lessons now that he's, 30 something years old
Right.
that I ever taught him, because he learned that he needed to figure out his setbacks. He needed to work through that, like that pain. And I think about it as adults now, we are so apprehensive, like, oh, what if we do this and it doesn't work out? That big 4-letter F word, the fear factor. And yet, so if it doesn't work out, okay, but at least you tried anyways.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally. I love it. So this brings me to a word that you use all the time in your life, audacity. If somebody told me that word, what does this word remind you of? It would be Erika, because she's always saying it. She's always talking about it. That's why it's part of the title of the episode. A bunch of her speeches talk about it. So I wanted to ask you, what does that word mean to you?
Well, I describe it in 3 B words: bold, brave, and badass, right?
Ooh.
And I always say, listen, it doesn't mean, though, I want to clarify a disclaimer, that it means it has to be extreme, or it always has to be over, over the limits. It's just showing up in your boldest, bravest form today, your most badass form that you can be like, you know what? And for someone, that may be 20% today. But if you're giving 100% of your 20%, then you're showing up in your truest form.
Yeah.
And whatever you're working at and whatever you're going towards, being willing to do something a little bit more, like we just talked about with the example that we were just saying about, whether it's swimming or deciding that new goal or whatever that may be, just being willing to show up a little bit stronger than you were yesterday in whatever you're pursuing. And stop worrying about what everyone else is going to think and start showing up in your most audacious form. And I think so often we get to a comfort zone. We get to that area that we're just, let's operate in this really comfortable swim lane. And sometimes you need to take the blinders, off and be willing to go full force into, what you're working on. And having audacious actions means I'm willing to go after what I know is really important to me, because it's my purpose, it's my passion, and at the end of the day, it's what's going to define my legacy.
I love it. So good. And you talk about this concept a lot for women. So a lot of our listeners are women. Can you talk about how you think maybe women struggle with audacity more than men, especially being in a male-dominated industry? All of that.
Yeah. And I love the comparison always. They always say, listen, if there's a job out there and, there's 10 criteria you need, and most women, unless they have 9 of the 10, they're not going to apply for it. Yep. And most men, if they have 2 of the 10, they'll apply for it with their eyes shut. And I always crack, think about that scenario. And I'm like, really? I'm like, we have, especially as women, so much going for us. And yet we still operate, to me, with trepidation, way more trepidation than we should. And again, by failing forward, we are taking those bold, audacious actions and actually getting closer and closer to that goal that we're working on. And I truly believe that as men and women, this is something we need to work on every day, just like we need to work on the muscle of resiliency. And with those goals, with those stretch goals, what are you doing to bring yourself closer to them? And having the audacity to say, you know what, no, this is what I want. It's not what he wants or what she wants or the mole I'm supposed to be in. And sometimes that may be going right when everyone else is going left. And it's so hard to do when we're in the moment. Yeah. But think about any time you've decided to make that decision and to go down the path less traveled, how much further you've come, how much growth you've developed because of it. And I guarantee, anyone listening to this, we were to ask you, where have you had the most growth? It's usually a time where you've had to have a setback that's brought you that much closer, because you've had the braveness and the boldness to keep plowing through even when it gets tough.
And it's the most fulfilling and rewarding. I think that's the thing. When I think back on so many things from my life, I feel the most sparked inside when I'm rewarded from working really hard, and usually that hard work was required to get through something hard.
Yes. The accomplishment is so much more, right? Like, and it's ours and we own it. And we
Yeah.
get that ability to do that in life. And I always say, listen, 20 years, 40 years, 50 years from now, what do you want to be remembered by? Like, how do you want to leave that legacy? And part of being audacious is saying, listen, I was willing to be bold, to be brave, to be a little badass and a little edgy and go after those things because that's what you want to leave this world with.
I love it. I love it. So good. And talk a little bit about your summit, because we do have listeners all over. So great time to visit Philadelphia, but
Yes.
also for our local listeners in the Philadelphia area, Erika is putting on a women's summit called the Audacious Woman. Is that
The
right?
Audacious Women Summit, on October 17th of 2025. It's going to be at Weston, Maine and Conshohocken. It is going to be 160, again, brave, bold, badass women in one room together, networking, phenomenal speakers, just such good content. And I truly believe that when you are in the room of high performers, when you're in the room of that audacious energy, you will next level. And we'll be about 12 weeks out from the end of 2025. So we're all going to end 2025 with a bang and then be the catapult to know exactly the vision and where we're going for 2026 as a group of women together. And it's been a dream of mine. I will tell you, Jacqueline, I don't know exactly every detail or exactly what I'm doing planning this. But again, it's having the audacity to say, listen, I'm going to figure it out along the way. And I think so often, like, we have this goal and this thing we want to do. And we're like, we have to know everything that the whole recipe.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm going to figure this out. And it's going to be the best summit that it's going to be because I'm willing to work through that with that audacious action.
I love it. And what I notice about Erika through and through that I think is a great lesson for everyone is you follow the things that spark your life. Like, you were like, this has been a dream of mine for so long. And you just lit up. Anyone watching the video could see it. It's the things. And Erika wants to plan a summit and it's amazing. And at this point in my life, I'm like, I would never want to plan a summit, right?
Yes.
Because we all have different things that spark us, right?
Right.
And so it's about like listening. You don't even have to like uncover it. It's already there, or life experiences will reveal it. I think I've had a combination of both. Like, oh my gosh, this thing happened and it's so clear to me that this is my next step. Like, I've had that. And then I've also had, it's always been there.
Right.
And maybe it's some combination of both. Like, I always saw myself being an entrepreneur and it's evolved in different ways. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah, like it's following that. And that's what the theme of this show is. So, I've never done this, but I'm just feeling inspired. I think I would like to institute a new segment and ask each guest, what does like living a life that feels sparked mean to you?
Oh, I love that. I love that I get to be the first.
You're the first.
Like the version question. I really believe, to your point, it's that spark that comes from within, that goal, that thing that makes you almost giddy and like a little like that nervous, queasy stomach a little bit, that when I said it out loud that I was going to do this summit and I didn't even know where I was going to like have it, but I just declared it. And I always say, when you say it out loud, when you write it down, you're 43% more likely to make it happen.
I love that you know that statistic.
Okay. And then when you say it out loud to someone else, you're 78% more likely to make it happen. So your odds go up exponentially. So tell a friend, pick up the phone, put it on your podcast, whatever it is, like, let that be the spark. By just saying it out loud, you're going to make that spark happen, and everything else you will figure it out. And then it was crazy how the whole summit came to about. I knew where I wanted to have it. I called the place. They're like, yeah, the date's available. Yes, this will work. Yes. And I was like, everything just started aligning the way that it was supposed to. And it's not that I haven't had a couple of, setback moments with it, or, oh, I wish this went better, or whatever. But all in all, I truly believe that when you have that spark, when you have that fire in your belly, when you know it's something you're destined to do, and you're letting the voices like up here hold you back, that fear and that, well, what if it doesn't happen? But what if it does?
I love it. And I want to add on to that something very important is whenever you listen to that voice, the good voice, the spark, you get signs from the universe that you're on the right path and that you're supposed to be doing it. So like the fact that, you called and it was just open. It's not to say, like you said, that there aren't setbacks, but it's really obvious. Like for me, I'm really big on like spiritual signs. So I'll see like my life path number. So I don't know if we have some listeners who've been listening to the podcast for a number of years, but I interviewed Caitlin Carehart probably in like 2022. I'll link that episode in the show notes. It's a great episode about like angel numbers.
Yes.
And so she talks about your life path number. Have you ever heard anything about this?
Yes.
Okay. So
and I love it.
My life path number is 7. And like, as soon as I like am like following something that's sparking me, especially the things like Erika was describing that are like a little scary. And it's like, I have not seen 7s in 7 months. And then every car in front of me is 777 license plate. And all of a sudden I start seeing butterflies everywhere, which is another just like positive sign for me.
Yes.
And these like various things that I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I look up this thing that is like a key piece of this idea and it's available, like you said, like the venue. And I'm like, this is so weird, but that's how it happens.
Yes, I totally agree. And I actually went to a Powerhouse Women's Summit back in August, and 22 is my favorite number. Okay.
Love it.
So like my soccer number was 22. My son's football number is 22. I got married on the 22nd. My son was born on the 22nd. My last 3 digits of my phone number are 222. My best friend, my first friend ever growing up next door to, her birthday's on the 22nd. Like it's everywhere. So I actually got a 22 on my wrist, a tattoo, and it's very small, very like simple, but every day it reminds me to go back to that because I truly believe in the sign that like when it's supposed to happen, it will.
Yeah.
And going back to that spark, if you feel it, do something about it. It is not going to go away. It's like trauma. The more you try to push it down, the more you try to repress it, it's going to come out, or you're gonna want to figure out a way to do it. So act on it.
Yeah.
Right.
And have you ever read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
Yes.
Okay. So I also think like it could go away.
Yes.
So you should act on it. So if you've never read
Agreed.
Big Magic, it's this really fascinating concept by Elizabeth Gilbert, who's the author of Eat, Pray, Love and a number of other novels. And she talks about how like she would sometimes have these ideas for like very specific novels, like a weird setting and time period. And then if she wouldn't act on it, she would like randomly run into another writer who was writing that exact story and she had never told anyone. So she believes that ideas are alive and that they will like move from host to host if the host doesn't act on it. So I do believe in, not that we have to like rush into things. Like obviously it's important to, be smart and make decisions that support you, but like act on it. Yeah.
Yes.
Like go for it because the spark might not be here forever. And it's not this like scarcity mindset, like I'm scared it's going to burn out, but more so like, hey, it's yours right now, but do something about it.
Yeah. The universe is tapping you and telling you. And like I said, I had this like feeling like I need to do this summit this year. My husband's like, can you really handle like one more thing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, I can.
Yeah.
Right? Like I will figure this out. And I always say when we have a will, like there is a way to do it. And, I'm writing my second book right now too. And I was like, there's no way I could do both like at the same time. And I'm like, no, there is. There is a way because they are so tied together of what I'm doing. And I truly believe that like when you stay in that alignment and you're following that, it doesn't feel like work. It really feels like such a passion that you're like working towards.
I love it. And I always say like when you're sparked in one area, it just overflows. So like you could be sparked about your book and then that energy, like you leave your writing session and you're feeling so good and then you're a better mom and then you're a better engineer and then you're a better when you're, working on your summit. And so it's this contagious energy in all areas of your life.
Totally. And I want to just also make sure is like the whole part of like the glitz that reminds me of your spark is making sure every day you are celebrating yourself for the things that you have done because it's going to help you every day. It's going to add those building blocks on and on to each other. And I truly believe that when you add those blocks onto each other, it makes that action happen so much easier too.
Yeah.
But if we're not stopping and celebrating for what we have, we will never attract more of it.
So tell me how you tangibly do this.
So I tangibly so for instance, one of my practice every morning is writing everything that I'm grateful for that day. Something that happened yesterday day, and it could be something simple. Like it could be something as simple as like, I'm so glad there's groceries in the fridge, right?
Yeah.
Like, or it could be something monumental like, hey, listen, I'm halfway through writing my book.
Yeah.
Or, hey, listen, tomorrow I'm launching the tickets for the Audacious Woman Summit. Like whatever it is that you are grateful for what you have right now, because the world will not allow, I truly believe the universe won't allow you to attract more or bring more in unless you're grateful for where you are right now.
Love it. Totally agree.
Hard to do. It's some days.
It's a habit. I think
is
that's
a
what
habit.
it is. So like I've talked about this on an episode before, but I used to gratitude journal also in the morning. But I felt like I had so many things I was squeezing into my morning routine that
Right.
it felt like an overwhelming thing. So I actually changed it to before bed at night. And my husband and I do, it was in, what was the book? Learned Optimism by Martin Seligman. And he talked about like the 3 blessings. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
But so we'll be like, what were your blessings from today? Or what were your blessings from the weekend? And we'll just tell each other. And it's now a habit and we just do it. And even when he was away traveling for work, we texted it. And I was like, that's how you know it's a habit.
I love that. I love that. And I will tell you that my family has a jar called our joyful jar.
Ooh.
And it's something we actually keep on our kitchen, like breakfast nook table. And we'll put something that we're joyful about or something that happened that day in there. And I love when my kids remind me. They're like, we haven't added anything to the joyful jar today.
I love that.
And to me, that's when you really, like when you start to instill that in, you have people that are checking and balancing you.
Yeah. And I love that you do it for your kids. I'm going to move my blessings to dinner once my son can talk.
But I love it. I love it. I love it. And I
He
will tell
can't
you,
quite talk yet.
I will tell you that in true transparency, we usually only are all sitting around the table, like where my kids are at 8 and 11 right now with umpteen sports and everything, once, maybe twice a week.
Yeah.
So we do it when we can,
Yeah.
right? Like,
you have to make it work.
But you got to make it work for your schedule. Because if you try to do anything that like is just pushing you too much, let's face it, like we'll just go, it's like paralysis. Like we'll just stop doing it.
Yep. I love all of this. I could talk to you for 17 hours, but I know you have to get back to your many hats. So thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your story, for sharing your light. It's such a blessing.
Oh, I am so honored to be here. Thank you for the spark you give to so many people. You are just such a beautiful host and just the magnificent work that you're doing. So I'm just excited to be audacious and spark everyone's energy together.
I love it. And are the tickets to the summit on sale yet? We're going to have them linked. Well, I will say this episode will go live probably in like 2 months.
They will still be live unless we're sold out or when we're sold out then. So I'm going to manifest that we might be sold out, but definitely check the link. I'm sure there'll be some that will be open.
We'll link it. And if not, you'll get on the wait list for next year.
Absolutely. And there's plenty of other ways that you can get in touch with me.
Thanks again, Erika. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.